up, footballers? James here, coming at you after that 1-0 loss. NYCFC. Things were just looking like they were starting to turn the corner for the Chicago Fire, coming off a 3-3 tie against New York Red Bull. Things were looking up. We'd scored goals in the run of play. Sure, we may have felt like we lost the game, even the coach saying so. But when we come back into that NYCFC game, in a baseball game, played in a baseball stadium, we really wanted to get that dub. We'll get into that here on Spitting Fire, that and more. Greatly appreciate you guys joining us here. Really take the moment to kick that like button. It's free. It helps spread the fire, helps burn down the YouTube algorithms. Take a moment to think about subscribing. If you already are, you better believe that utterly delights us. And please consider joining. What's up, everybody? Well, guys, damned if we do, damned if we don't. Or is something else afoot here in Chicago? We are currently in last place in all of MLS. For the race for the supporter shield, that is. And when it comes to the race for the playoffs, not looking so good either. Chicago Fire in last place in the Eastern Conference. Starting to have to climb a mountain of points now here. Needing at least 3 points to get right back into it, wouldn't you say, Fire fans? Maybe 6. But a good 3 wins will get you 9 points. But you got to imagine all those other teams could be getting points along the way. Thus, creating a larger mountain. Can Chicago Fire mitigate that? We certainly hope so as Chicago Fire fans. So, Fire fans, do you think that they can? Do you think that the Fire still have what it takes to be able to salvage this MLS season, maybe even push for that 7th playoff spot, that 6th playoff spot? Are they a fringe playoff team, or are they a little bit less? As some of their parts might not be the current amount that's needed to make the playoffs. So let us know in the comments below, please. We love reading your comments here on Spitting Fire. Guys, we got a fun one for you. We got a fun one planned. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to be looking through stats. We're just going to be taking a little statistical dive into what the Chicago Fire are and what's going on with them, as well as listening to a little bit of Arlo White and Tyler Terens' take on the whole situation. And let's get into that and comment as we go along. Greatly appreciate you guys joining us here on Spitting Fire.
At the Red Bull Arena. Fan, incredible work, and now he's going to get into the Etihad and the thrilling day that I'd had on the Premier League season. And look, I don't want to. I'm very pro. You know, I'm very pro MLS, and I love the league. I've worked in the league. Sure. I broadcast the league. I've given my career over to the league for many years, and I'm a huge believer in soccer in the United States. What I saw in the second half at Citi Field, the home of the New York Mets.
At that baseball stadium, Arlo?
Citi Field, the home of your New York Mets.
Do it properly. The NL East leading New York Mets.
Tyler,
the NL East leading New York Mets.
I know you're
Mets.
a New York Mets homer, though.
Right, and frankly, that's the only sport that should be played at that stadium.
It should be.
Based on what I saw yesterday.
Good point.
Because if you're going to, and I understand there are issues with NYCFC, the reigning champions, fantastic, part of the City Football Group. They've had some great players down the years.
He's talking about New York City FC, their connections to like the big club of Man City and City Football and the money that is that apparatus. And the fact that they do not have a stadium in New York yet is kind of shocking. They were at Yankee Stadium there for a little bit. Now they're over at New York Mets Stadium. And neither situation is really all that great.
I love the branding. They're an asset.
Let's know what you think, chat.
Major asset for Major League Soccer.
Of course. They're able, with all that money, they're able to bring in so much talent. They're able to make moves and win MLS like they did last year. And with some of that money, some of that talent, some of those scouts, some of the money and the ideas and the brains behind the City Football Group. But here they are, one of the main awesome franchises of MLS, floundering about New York, floundering about one of the main cities without a home. Meanwhile, you got New York Red Bull having a nice stadium.
Having a stadium at this stage of their existence, what are we, 5-6 years down the line, and there's no stadium in the works either. You look at the buildings that are going up in St. Louis, Columbus, Nashville, Cincinnati, just phenomenal football stadiums. Now, I know New York City and real estate and buying land and building regulations, I know it's an absolute nightmare. But to play on a field that poor, that narrow, that unconducive to any sort of quality football at this level in Major League Soccer, I thought was, and I'll just tone it down a little bit and say, disappointing.
And to have the players the players that they bring in to have to play in those conditions, it is disappointing. And if we look at the Chicago Fire, then they've won 2, drawn 5, lost 6, 15% games won. They're not looking good right now. Their defense, 17 goals conceded. They're pretty decent defensively, but their attack is abysmal. They really need to figure something out here. And New York City is a good team, but imagine New York City having a stadium like Soldier Field to play in. That'd be something.
And I give the Fire a complete pass on yesterday. And actually, they were the better team in the second half that I saw. Should have equalized, should have at least got a point. I can understand Xherdan Shaqiri just going bonkers at the end and being so frustrated with the situation. Look, you're a Mets fan, you're a New Jersey guy, you know, this must have been a thrill for you to walk through and to announce at Citi Field, and I'd love to get your take on the day itself. But in terms of the conditions that game was played in, and you could clearly see the baseball diamond as well, what was your take?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, this is the second baseball stadium that I've called a game from. Obviously, the first one being Yankee Stadium last year, in the 1-0 loss that the Chicago Fire suffered to NYCFC, and that was, you know, it's crazy thinking back to last year. The Fire went 1-1-1 against the eventual champions, and in all of the 3 games that the Fire played against NYCFC, never in my wildest, you know, analysis of that team did I think that team's going to win MLS Cup. Never did I think that, especially when they were playing against the Fire. And
that's a great point there, Tyler, though. But that just points out to the parity that's in MLS. These teams are very even keeled against each other. Chicago Fire went 1-1-1 against the league champions last year. Chat. That's incredible. And when you consider that parity, and you see Chicago losing some of these ties and falling behind on some of these battles that they have interleague during the season versus New York Red Bull, versus Minnesota, versus the teams that they're going to be playing again, you know, Columbus, what have you. They need to be stacking points here, but it's not shocking that they aren't when there's so much parity within the league. Now, despite that parity, Chicago Fire still have yet to find a way to consistently win. They are at the bottom of the league for a reason. They're sitting here in 14th place, and they have not been stacking points. Look at that away record, 1-4-2. And we were applauding Ezra for his away record early on. I mean, he got his away win, quickly destroying that scary little specter that was looming behind Wiki and Paunovic and a lot of other MLS coaches for Chicago Fire with having poor away records. But we thought, oh, that was behind us. It's still here. And in fact, look at even Chicago Fire at home. 1 win, 1 win away. 2 wins on the year. 5 ties, 6 losses. They need to figure out a way to switch some of those losses into wins or ties and get some of those ties into wins. What's up, Connor? What's up, Connor? Hopefully you've been figuring out OBS and being able to play those games. I heard Borderlands 3 might be a little too crazy for you. We were listening to the Intercontinental Football Show with Arlo White and Tyler Terens, just taking a listen and commenting with them. It's almost like having them on the show, but be able to comment with them live.
CFC needed that game. There might have been 1,500 people at Yankee Stadium when they played that last game, and NYCFC desperately needed that result. Yankee Stadium has the vantage point is horrific. You end up watching
broadcast.
The broadcast.
Oh, the broadcast?
You end up watching the monitor more than
Tyler.
you end up watching the field. And at that point, you might as well just broadcast the game remotely, which of course is one of my fortes. But I'd rather be on site, 100 times out of 100. But in that scenario, right, I'd almost just rather not be there.
Never say.
So I mean, they're just saying in general that Citi Field is just a poor place to have a game of soccer, whether it's calling it or playing it. Stick to baseball there, maybe. And they have to figure out a soccer-specific situation, soccer-specific stadium situation out there in New York for New York City FC right away for the champions. And it's crazy that other stadiums have since already popped up. Meanwhile, NYCFC, they've commented 5-6 years just floundering in the wind. It's unbelievable.
Let's say I may as well do it off a monitor. Don't give anyone any ideas.
Only if it's out of base. My mouth when I'm talking about a first division professional soccer game in the United States is heinous at its core and in its essence. So with that in mind, I was geeking out so hard. I got to the stadium 3 hours early. I walk over to the Ralph Kiner broadcast booth that is graced by none other than Gary Cohen, Ron Darling, and Keith Hernandez, the greatest baseball broadcast.
Oh, that's
booth
cool.
What a lineup.
Wow. I mean, just 3 consummate professionals and guys that I have just grown up listening to and have grown extremely
Keith Hernandez.
Buck is with ESPN and earnings
at City. Look, let's take the conditions out of it. Do they draw better there than Yankee Stadium? Is there a case where they could move there permanently and sort the field out?
Maybe, but I think that they're already attached to being in the Bronx, and I know that they want to be in one of the 5 boroughs in general. But Queens seems like the spot where you can where there's space, right? That's the problem for New York, is that they need to find space, and that's the problem for Chicago as well. In these big metropolitan cities, where are you going to put a brand new soccer specific stadium that is parking in the whole thing? So, with all that in mind, I really thought that the first 20, 25 minutes of the game from the Fire was very, very...
I mean, that's always what we always forget about, but plus parking, plus infrastructure, plus getting to the place. That all has to go into it. The plumbing, the electricity, all that stuff.
Good. They were pressing. They were making sure that NYCFC couldn't really breathe, couldn't play out. And both teams are playing 3 games in 8 days. And this is the 3rd game, obviously. And NYCFC had a couple of pieces missing and some rotation, a couple pieces missing and some rotation. And then a really harsh handball called on Miguel Navarro. Now, it's harsh, but it's by the letter of the law, which I do believe is wrong when you're thinking about a handball and how it's interpreted, right? So if you're going to take out the natural position wording of it,
talking about that vicious handball,
if it's going to be, I
can't show it.
If your body is or if your arm is extended away from your body and it's making your body bigger, okay, yeah, it's a handball. But how, as a defender, if you're jumping, Arlo, and you're any semblance of an athlete, how are you supposed to jump without having your arms up? Well, really, if you...
That's a good point. Let's go into the closet cam. What Tyler Terens is talking about here is being able to jump. I'm hoping you guys can hear me in the closet cam. Just being able to jump. And the ball's coming across there, the goal's here, and the defender is here, and the player behind him is here. So they're trying to line up the ball, and they're trying to jump and knock it out of bounds behind him, out of line. So he goes, puts his hands up, and in doing so, ball glances off his head, and then glances off his hand, and then goes out of bounds. Then they goes back. They call it VAR, and they award a penalty.
You're standing up right now and you're working from home and you're listening to this podcast. I want you to just do a little bit, do something for me. Try to jump up in an athletic form and not raise your arms. You're going to jump like a penguin. What else is Miguel Navarro supposed to do? The ball hits his hand. They go to VAR. Fotis Pazakos ends up calling a penalty. It's the right call by the letter of the law, but the law is written incorrectly. And we could talk about this for an entire pod. But Eber steps up, buries the penalty, 2nd goal of the season. And from there, NYCFC just sort of cracked on. And by cracked on, I mean that neither team really played anything close to aesthetically pleasing football. And they just, sort of wore the Fire down and were able to get it done. But this was a game that was not.
Well, I think Connor's got a point. The NYCFC guys are the most biased announcers in the league. And that pen was complete bullshit. Chicago was robbed. Should have gotten maybe another point on the road against the NYCFC, but the referees awarded what it was.
Jump like a penguin. What else is Miguel Navarro supposed to do? The ball hits his hand. They go to VAR. Fotis Pazakos ends up calling a penalty. It's the right call by the letter of the law, but the law is written incorrectly. And we could talk about this for an entire pod. But Eber steps up, buries the penalty, 2nd goal of the season. And from there, NYCFC just sort of cracked on. And by cracked on, I mean that neither team really played anything close to aesthetically pleasing football. And they just, sort of wore the Fire down and were able to get it done. But
and it's also a product of that field, that awful field that they have to play on. Christopher saying, unless they learn how to jump like a salmon all the time, stupid pens.
This was a game that was not fun to really watch from like a beautiful game perspective, but that's because of the field. So Another tough result, and I know Fire fans are just sort of like, at this point, this just feels, it feels empty. It really does, and it feels just sort of not same old Fire, because I do not want to hear that when we're talking about this team. But as far as the results are concerned, it's 9 without a win in league play, 10 across all competitions.
I mean, Tyler, some of those fans have a point, though. The Fire being Fire. Here we are again in last place. I mean, are you saying you don't want to hear it? I understand. We need to support our team, and it does feel different this year. I'm on your side on the equation when it comes to this. I do believe that something's different with the Fire, but all the same, they're fighting up against a league that are all climbing the same mountain. And Chicago Fire is like, oh yeah, we finally have enough to be able to win playoffs. But you guys got to face it. We were starting in last place on climbing the wall, and all the money in the world that they were able to throw at the team and build, it did not do enough to speed them up the wall and bypass many teams in MLS. They're still years behind in experience in many areas, and they're not taking advantage of some areas of MLS, which might have made them a better MLS team, like how picking up a couple key MLS veterans on the cheap being like, using some of the methods and the mechanisms that are available in MLS, free agency, what have you, to bring in some quality players to be able to round out the squad and make it not only viable for the future, but to win in MLS this season. Christopher saying, are you listening to podcasts or something? When's next Lego stream and potential Fire game? Next Fire game is Saturday. Next Lego stream is going to be very, very soon. Actually, probably we'll do that maybe tomorrow night for my Wednesday night stream. We'll do Lego Star Wars Episode 7. That's going to be my basic plan, unless something for some reason changes that. I was thinking about doing that actually today, but thank you for asking there, Christopher. I'm going to have a lot of blast with those Lego Star Wars streams. So Episode 7, look forward to tomorrow night, Wednesday night, on my typical Wednesday evening streams. I'll probably be around 7 or 6 o'clock. I'll make sure I announce that out there for you guys. Connor having a great point, though. I mean, it's the same thing everywhere in MLS. Just all fans want to do is just complain, and it's like the fans are complaining about the same thing. It's so funny when you look at these fan bases, from the Crews fan base to the Chicago Fire's fan base to all these little fan bases that are struggling around Toronto, and they're saying, I mean, look at Toronto. Toronto's playing Canada Cup, but Toronto still they're struggling in MLS. They're far back in the, if you take a look in the supporter shield, they're right around where the Fire are. Right there. They don't have a win on the road. They only have wins at home. Vancouver doesn't have any wins on the road, nor does Columbus. Columbus has been struggling on the road. They've been quite good at home, and that's the difference between the top teams and some of the lower teams. Well, this is interesting. New York Red Bulls, though, still without a win at home. All their wins coming away. Quite interesting. Meanwhile, the Colorado Avalanche inverse 5-0. These are some crazy stats. But Chicago Fire 1-1. They're just not doing enough to flip that script.
This is really difficult to sort of wrap your head around. But the good news is, again, it's 5 points out of a playoff spot. It is nothing. Yeah. And it's nothing. And now you're heading into this Toronto game, Arlo.
6.
Get 4 points from this road swing. I think most Fire fans would have bitten off your arm for 4 points in a 3-game road swing. And Toronto's in a bad way. The only team that's sort of close to Fire in terms of form right now. And Bob Bradley cannot seem to figure it out. And Lorenzo Insigne cannot come soon enough for that group. Arlo, you might be on the call for his first game in Major League Soccer as well in July when Toronto come to town. But
Toronto are playing bad, but are they as bad as the Chicago Fire? Eee. What do you think, chat?
Regardless.
Chris was saying, in my opinion, the big teams saying that get all the refs decisions, teams like Toronto, DC, Inter Miami, the lesser teams get shafted by the referees. It does seem to be like I don't know if it's like the bigger teams, someone maybe it's like the bigger players. Carlos Vilas, they get the calls. And then sometimes it's like the people that have been in the league that the referees know. Connor saying Columbus will pick it up. We'll pick it up. Good to get out of the losing streak out of the way early. We did this last year late and missed the playoffs by a point. Yeah, sometimes you want to get just get the bad soccer out of you early on and figure out how to improve from it. But can you? Right, chat? Meanwhile, look at Chicago Fire. I mean, can they, if you really think that they're going to shake it off those doldrums? I have every belief that Columbus can do it. But Chicago Fire, I'm not so sure at the moment. Statistically, you can see why. Columbus, good at home. They're able to win at home. Fairly, decently, fairly regular. Get the point at home, right? Away, they still have, questions to be asked. They still have to figure that out. But Chicago Fire have questions to be asked at home and away. I'm just using those guys as my specific example. Meanwhile, look at Inter Miami, struggling, but still doing a little bit better than both Columbus and Fire. I mean, they have a win away and a couple wins at home. They're stacking the points at home, which is what needs to be done. Except for the 2 games that they missed out on. But for the most part, when you got to be stacking those points at home. More wins better, but you really can't be taking those losses. Keep the beard. I prefer it. We shall see when I will rock. But yeah, maybe I will. Here, I don't know yet.
A really frustrating performance, a frustrating road trip. And listen, the way that the Wednesday game went down made all of this that much more difficult to really wrap your head around, because the nature of that 3-3 draw, and I think that a lot of fans would have signed up for a draw on the road against Red Bull, but scoring in the 89th minute and then conceding 90 seconds later, impossible. And
brutal.
And the mistake.
I was watching that game live in the wee small hours, and I was leaping about my front room after Xherdan Shaqiri's beautiful finish. And you think 3-2, they played some super football. Chris Mueller's goal with the combination with Gutierrez, and just such a good showing, and then to blow it right at the end when you could have started a 3-match road swing with 3 points in a very, very difficult place. It was heartbreaking. But there were so many positives to take from that game. But then, as I say, you go into that situation where everything is against you in City Field, and it just made it very difficult.
It felt like 2 points lost, but you got Chris Mueller on the score sheet for the Fire.
It absolutely
you got
did.
Xherdan Shaqiri his first goal from the run of play.
Yeah,
and you scored off a set piece, and Wyatt Omsberg gets his first professional goal. It was all set up.
The run of play goals were huge, because that's the Chicago Fire have been struggling with this. If we go to the statistics here, just real quick, go to Chicago Fire, look at this goals right here. It should be 11. Yep, 11 goals. It was at 7 last week, and of those 7, 5 were in the run of play. 2 were from penalties. They need to figure out a way. Penalty kick taken, penalty. Yeah, see penalty kick goals right here. And they missed one, but they need to be scoring goals in the run of play. That's what needs to happen right here. Total attacking assist, long balls. Chicago Fire. Let's see how they're doing on long balls. Right in the middle of the pack. Okay, long ball percentage. They should be at the top. Come on. They got some tall people. Should be winning those. Assists, not a lot. Last, because they're just not scoring goals. Accurate back zone passes. I expect Chicago Fire to be up there. Let's see. Not actually up there. Lower. They need to figure out these accurate back zone passes. Accurate forward zone passes. Also not good. Passing in Chicago Fire, guys. We're just being revealed right here. Not as good as it needs to be. And then we look at that passing percentage. Once again, in the lower rungs of the league. That's on Ezra to coach this, because these are professional players. Or unless it's on the players, guys, who do you think it's on? Let us know in the chat.
For the Fire to be able to get 3 points. Unfortunately, a bad mistake from Boris Sekulic, not following his run to give up that goal. And then obviously the mistake from Gaga, and that was 2 games in a row where he's sort of, might have cost them a result if we're really going to be honest about it. But
wow.
Yeah, I mean, then you go into Citi Field and the home of the auxiliary home of the champions, and just a really difficult road swing.
Yeah, well, the game was the Red Bull game. There was mistakes on Gaga, but guys, the breakdowns that happened before the ball even got to Gaga were embarrassing. Were absolutely abysmal, appalling. And so I can't just blame Gaga. The fact that they walked through the Fire. They walked through the Fire defense like they were leaf paper. And they're just a hand just going tearing through. And sure, and what was Gaga supposed to do? He's like, oh, I'm the last guy. I know it. And he's ready to do what he can do, but when everybody in front of you just keeps folding play after and game after game, and they do rely on you to be that last line of defense. That bend don't break mentality. Sometimes you're gonna break, and they just need to patch it up and get it back so it go back to the bend don't break mentality. But Fire gotta tighten up things on defense and offense.
2 out of the first 3 of this 3-game road trip, and now you're sort of thinking to yourself, I'm not ready. I asked Tony this question on the broadcast, and I'm curious on your thoughts. I'm not ready to go ahead and say there needs to be a fundamental change in philosophy, formation, whatever it might be, to try to get this team going, because you still were missing Rafael Chihos along the back line. You ended up having to bring Carlos Terán on because
missing Chihos is awful. It's really revealed this back line to just be really, 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 really bad. If you do not have Chihos in that back line, this is a USL level back line. All of a sudden it feels like how does it drop to that level? Is just Chihos that good, or are the other people around him just fall apart that bad? What is going on here? Because there's times when Wyatt Omsberg looks like an MLS caliber, an MLS capable center back. There's times when Boris Sekulic, when Miguel Navarro, they look like MLS capable outside backs. But when you take Chicos out of the equation, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like you took the engine out of the car. It is going nowhere.
As Mauricio Pineda did pick up a knock towards the end of the first half, and you're a little sort of out of sorts from a personnel standpoint along the back line. But when it comes to the attacking third, and Citi Field's is a difficult place to play, but also just due to the dimensions of the field, the Fire can't really play the expansive, sort of clean football that they want to play, and that when they're at their best, they're capable of playing. But I'm right on the borderline of sort of, well, does something need to change? I don't think it's coaching staff. I don't think it's anything along those lines.
And now when you're saying that as a Tyler Terens, I mean, this is interesting because it's hard for some of these people in the positions that they are to really speak honestly. They work with these other people. They work with Ezra Hendrickson and Georg Heitz. They really can't call for some of those types of changes. So it's like, what is he going to call for? I wonder.
That it might be, how do we get our best 11 on the field and change it up? Because even Arlo,
so if it's how do we get our best 11 on the field and you can't make changes, it sounds like you have to change Ezra, because you're saying that Ezra is not getting our best 11 on the field. But I feel like Ezra is getting our best 11 on the field. It's what they're doing with that time on the field.
For a player, I know that the 4-2-3-1 and sort of, like having this system in place and being able to work on it, since preseason was always the idea. And you haven't even had Jairo Torres, Chris Mueller, and Xherdan Shaqiri on the field for even close to 90 minutes yet.
No, you haven't. You haven't had your full firepower. For the first 10 games, you didn't really have Chris Mueller or Jairo Torres. Now, these last 2 games, yeah, you've had them. But in the next 10 games, we're going to really see what the Fire could be made of. But who is that on? That Fire went into the season with broken wings, literally broken wings. They had, depending on Fabian Herbers and Brian Gutierrez. Brian Gutierrez may be more of a natural number 10 than really a winger. Meanwhile, the number 10 position over in Montreal looking really good with Georgi Mihailovic. It also would look really good over here, I think.
But I'm right on the cusp of like, okay, something needs to change at some point.
Yeah.
And
but
But
what, Tyler? And if you're not willing to honestly say what,
tactical change, I'm not sure what that is.
Well, I can remember.
Oh, really? I'm not sure what it is. Is it Ezra that you're talking about? Is it Georg Heitz, or is it something else? Guys, what do you chat think? Let us know in the comments below.
The last season when I was in Chicago, and a couple of results had gone against Rafa Wicki's side at the time. And do you remember the night when he went to 3 at the back?
Yep.
I think it was at the Philadelphia Union.
It was.
And, the Fire hadn't been scoring. They hadn't been getting results. And the Union were very strong. Okay, I don't think Shabilko played in that game, and they rested a couple of stars. But it was 3-3, and it was thrilling. And the Fire started scoring goals and getting a few results after that, culminating in that great 3-0 victory over Atlanta United in the last game that I called. So, you don't have to tear everything up and start again, but a tweak.
Dude, it's at this point, though, where you're at make or break points in the season where you can tear it up and start all over again. But what are you sacrificing? What are you losing? What are you losing by doing that, by pulling the plug? so to speak. If you pull the plug on Ezra and bring in somebody else, that somebody else has to be clearly remarkably better, has to have a demonstrable system, a demonstrable way to score goals. And it just can't be another one of these guessing games. That's what Rafa Wiki, that's what Paunovic is. That's what Ezra Hendricks is. They've been guessing games by the Chicago Fire's GMs at the time, trying to be the smartest guy in MLS. And I'm starting to get sick of these guys trying to play smartest guy in MLS when it's just go talk to Garth Lagerwey. But here's the thing: this is a Garth Lagerwey guy. At some point, Garth Lagerwey did hire this guy, Ezra Hendrickson. He's been with the Seattle Sounders. He's been with LA Galaxy. Ezra Hendrickson. He's been with Columbus Crew. Caleb Porter, winning championships all the while. So he has the pedigree that I feel Paunovic lacked. That I feel Wiki lacked for MLS specifically. Now Paunovic won a World Cup with his team. U17 team, which is all the credit to him. Wiki was showing promise with his young teams, but MLS is a different animal. Managing men is a different animal. Man management at the professional level is just such a different animal. Connor's he's saying Ezra without saying his name. But here's the thing. By ripping up the Ezra project, you got to pull the plug now. And it's your last move as GM. If you're GM, you're looking at this and you're like, I could either stick with Ezra and ride it out, but if they don't produce this year, I probably might be out of a job. If they don't produce in the next 2 seasons, this next season, I'm definitely out of a job. So do I stick with Ezra, or is there somebody out there I could bring in right now that could change the fortunes of Chicago Fire and hit the panic button? That's the thing. If he doesn't feel he has to hit the panic button, he's got another season assured to him. Maybe he doesn't pull the plug on the Ezra situation yet. I don't think you should. I like Ezra as a coach. I like the ideas he's trying to instill. I wonder, here's the thing. I do feel like he's been given a lot of the parts needed to succeed that some of these coaches in the past were not. He's got a Rafa Chicos. He's got a Gaga Sonina. He's got a pillar in defense. He's got a pillar in goal. I don't see any other Chicago Fire coach in the last 2-3 seasons, or in the last 2-3 coaches really getting that. Really. I mean, the parade and goal since Sean Johnson left has been created problems for the coach. There hasn't been a pillar in goal, and that pillar in defense has been nowhere. I'm sorry, Bastian Schweinsteiger was not a pillar of defense. Chicos is showing you that. I think clearly you had to figure out how to play with Bastian Schweinsteiger. It's a little bit different, and then you also had the other defender. What is it? Who plays for San Jose now? What's his face? I'm gonna have to look it up. San Jose center back. Earthquake TVs. Roster. Their captain, I'm sure. Calvo. Francisco Calvo. He was never all that great of an MLS defender. I mean, yeah, he statistically shows up, but just the Chicos is, you're finally seeing what they could do. Midfield, we have not sorted out. Some of the best midfielders we had was like Dax McCarty on a good day, and Georgia Mihailovic when they were able to get him on a good day, because he was still figuring things out here in Chicago Fire. He was not the player he's become over at Montreal. He was becoming that player right here at the end of Chicago Fire. It was very exciting times and exciting to see his future progression. But once again, GM pulled the plug on that for some reason, thought it was more valuable to get that funny money and spend it on a guy like Kasper Przbilka, who can't score right now. He's 6 foot tall, but cannot score. It's causing issues for this thing here, this project in Chicago. Chicago Fire are in a heap of trouble. They're hitting pitfall after pitfall, and it's through some of the ghosts of the past, so to speak, that I think that's they're doing here. And we're expecting this team with Jordan Shaqiri, with good players, to all of a sudden just start being really, really good. The infrastructure is just now falling into place, Fire fans. it's still not even fully complete. The meat has not gone over the bones yet, so to speak. And the Fire need time. And if this season is that, if this season's the time of development and we sacrifice one season for development to get to the next step to winning, so be it, right? We might have to take those lumps. However, how are fans going to stand it? It's here they are. They have the promise of Soldier Field. They have the promise of Shaqiri, the promise of future success, and they're just still not getting it. The promises were made and kind of are here now. The expectations have been made and are here. We were expected to be better than a bad MLS team that we were last year, but right now we're not.
Can reap rewards, and if you look at this starting 11 from NYCFC, if you were to revert to something like a 4-3-3 with Jimenez at the base, I have no problem with Navarro in that sort of Jordan Henderson type role where he's kind of box to box, and Xherdan Shaqiri on the left.
He's not a box to boxer though. I mean, he's probably our closest to that. Federico Navarro is probably our closest to a box to box player, but his offensive skills are not really as honed as his defensive skills.
Side of that. You know, that midfield three where he can still create, he can still get on the ball and cause heaps of damage to the opposition. Yeah. Might have a little bit more tracking back to do, but then you've got Mueller one side and either Guti or Torres on the other, and then Shabilko in between as the striker.
Shabilko though, why are you guys hung up on Shabilko? I think it's time to move on to John Jay Duran.
Duran as the striker, to the opposition.
Yeah.
Might have a little bit more tracking back to do, but then you've got Mueller one side and either Guti or Torres on the other, and then Shabilko in between as the striker, or Duran as the striker. So it's a little tweak that means that Jimenez, who puts in tackles all over the place and can use the ball and distribute from that position, or if he's not available, then Pineda is perfect to slot in there. I think there's more to Navarro's game than simply snapping at ankles and winning balls back. I think he can play, and he's going to develop. He's only very young. We know that Xherdan Shaqiri can play, and that still puts him in a situation where it's not a floating free role or a number 10 role, but it's still an attacking midfield position. And you've got the wide guys who are going to be phenomenal, whether that's a homegrown in Guti or the two big signings in Torres and Mueller. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Duran, who we've seen score, or Shabilko, who we know can score in Major League Soccer. So you've not torn everything up there. You've not fundamentally changed your philosophy and approach to the game. It's a tweak. And it depends on the opposition, but it's a tweak that might get the best out of that midfield, out of Xherdan Shaqiri, and out of that front three.
Agreed. And it could be a 4-3-3. I mean, I was even thinking for a moment, I was like on the bus after the game and we were driving from Citi Field to Newark, because that's where we ended up flying out of. And obviously it's a long drive, Sunday traffic leaving the city. Not exactly what you want to be doing on a Sunday night, particularly after a loss, but that's simply where we found ourselves. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what formation could work? I'm thinking about maybe like a 4-4-2 diamond of some sort where
is it a formation switch that's needed to make this team be successful? Chat, what do you think? Is that all that's needed? Is Ezra just playing the wrong formation and that's it? I mean, that's actually very possible. Little change. I'm also not sold that even that change though will make things work, but maybe it will. Because it's all about these players figuring out how to get the passes, how to find the zones, how to find the holes, how to expose those holes, and how to keep repeating it and digging and digging and digging until you put one in the back of the net. And then you keep putting them in the back of the net.
Maybe a Chris Mueller or a Jairo Torres a little more withdrawn underneath Shabilko, or making runs in behind if Shabilko's checking. And Shaqiri obviously at the top of that, and maybe Jairo Torres and Gastón Jiménez on either side, and then Federico Navarro, at the base, or Gastón Jiménez at the base. There's a number of different things that you could potentially do, but even to just try it out for a game and just reset the batteries. You and I both know in any form of life, in any walk of life, a change is as good as a rest and as good as a reset. And I just think that again, I started this by saying I'm not convinced that we're there yet, but we're very, very close.
I mean, we're not even close. We're not very, very close. We're not very, very close. We're close in some regards to figuring out ways to score, but Chicago Fire are still very, very much behind the 8 ball. To me, it feels like, in comparison to the Seattle Sounders, to the New York Red Bulls, to the NYCFCs, even to the Inter Miamis. Heck.
If you can go ahead and get 3 points at Toronto in the 4-2-3-1 and you're close to your strongest 11 as possible, then you can say, crack on and be like, all right, this is what we're going to stick with. Let's put our heads down and let's find our form now in the dog days of the summer. But right now it just seems a little stale moving forward. That's simply what it is. But again,
been stale.
We still have not seen this team at its full strength 11 with Jairo Torres in the starting 11. He's still yet to start. He played 45 minutes, on the road against tough NYCFC team. And credit to NYCFC.
Why is this team hinged upon Jairo Torres? Why is this team hinged upon Chicos? Like, there's teams out there that when they lose some of their key guys, they can still figure it out because all the other key guys are out there. Who are the key guys out there for Chicago Fire right now, chat? I mean, if these are our key guys and they're not out there yet.
Because they got 9 points in a week. That is not an easy thing to do in Major League Soccer. And particularly when they were missing Tati Castellanos due to yellow card suspension. And, you talk about City Football Group. And obviously, I started the broadcast with sort of a reluctant congratulations to Manchester City, for winning the Premier League. But when you're thinking about the City Football Group and the scouting department that they have, they aren't missing when it comes to these signings that they're making in these Brazilian and particularly, Brazil, Uruguayan signings that as NYCFC have made over the past year or so. Thiago Andrade, Thais Magno, Thiago Martins coming over, end up signing a center back as a DP. And this new kid, Gabriel Pereira, who's coming off the bench, he's already got 2 goals in 7 appearances, and he's only made 2 starts. So they continue to hit on almost every single signing. And it's almost not fair to have City Football Group sort of funding a team in Major League Soccer. But full credit to them for being able to get over the line, and 3 wins in a week is very impressive. But I'm just sort of on the cusp of like, does something need to change from a philosophy standpoint? So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the Toronto game, and then if it is a draw or a loss, if there has to be a change in order to just sort of reset the batteries and say, okay, now we need to figure it out.
Fair play to the.
If there is a change, chat, what do you think that means? You think that there's 1 game left in the Ezra Hendrickson era if he does not get a win? Is that what that means, chat? Is that what Tyler Terens is seemingly suggesting? I'm not so sure, but could mean big changes are coming for Chicago Fire, which, as we know, are going to be crazy. What is going on? Oh, a little community.